Just before Leonardo da Vinci began work on his famous painting, The Last Supper, he had what is described as a violent argument with another painter. Da Vinci was so bitter about this confrontation that he determined to paint the face of his enemy, this other painter, onto the face of Judas Iscariot. He thought this would be the perfect revenge. For generations to come, this man's face would be connected to the one who betrayed Jesus. The face of Judas, by the way, was the first one finished on the painting. Da Vinci continued. He knew that everyone would be able to recognize this as the painter with whom he had quarreled. So he continues this painting. Then finally he gets to the face of Jesus. And that is where he hit a major roadblock. No progress. Something was holding him back. Something was frustrating his efforts. And then it finally hit him. He had painted the face of his enemy onto the face of Judas. When he changed the face of Judas, he was immediately able to resume his work on the face of Jesus. The painting has remained a cherished work of art for generations. The great lesson that we can learn from this story is that Da Vinci moved past his desire for revenge. He made the right choice instead. He broke the power of hatred and allowed the love of Christ to have the last word. Tonight we begin a new series of studies that will take us through Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. John Stowell says the Sermon on the Mount, is probably the best known part of the teaching of Jesus. It is also arguably the least understood and certainly the least obeyed. Author Charles Swindoll says, if I were asked to suggest an overall theme to this grand sermon, it would be different. Let's just peruse through the sermon and notice this. Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, Jesus talked about how to be different in how we respond to others. You have heard that it was said to the people of long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Jesus' message, be different. Then down to Matthew chapter 5, verse 27, Jesus said, be different when it comes to sexual purity. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Be different in how we respond to others. Be different when it comes to sexual purity. Matthew chapter 5, verse 31. Be different when it comes to our view of marriage and this view of divorce. In verse 33, be different when it comes to being a people of honesty. In verse 37, be different in the way that we look at revenge. And in verse 43, be different in the way we treat our enemies. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus told his disciples to be different from religious leaders when it comes to giving, praying, and fasting. Be different in the way we look at material possessions. And don't worry like the rest of the world. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus said we are to be different when it comes to judging others. In prayer, approach the Father with great faith. Be different in prayer. When it comes to making decisions, don't follow the crowd. Be different. Follow the path that leads to life. It may be different, but it protects us from Satan and it provides a strong foundation when we face storms of life. That, in a very brief nutshell, well, that's the Sermon on the Mount. Be different. Uh, Wait a minute. I left out an important part, the beginning, the introduction, if you will, the Beatitudes. That's these 8 statements that just scream, be different. Charles Swindoll says these 8 statements together create the portrait of a servant. In his book, Improving Your Serve, Swindoll says, commonly called the Beatitudes, this section is the most descriptive word portrait of a servant ever recorded. That was the life that Jesus lived, the life that he called his followers to live, and the life that turned the world upside down for Jesus. Jesus completely changed the way that the world looked at the Messiah. Jesus completely changed the way the world looked at greatness. Jesus described that difference in many places. I'm reminded of Mark chapter 10, verse 45. It is one that really stands out, where Jesus said, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Over the next few months, we want to visit this great sermon. And we'll begin by spending several weeks in this introduction, if you will, in the Beatitudes. So as we do so, we want to have several goals in mind. Number one, let's seek to understand what Jesus was teaching the crowd on the mountainside that day. Number two, let's seek to understand how that message might apply to us today. Number three, each beatitude comes with a promise. Let's be sure to look at that each week. And then number four, we don't want to lose sight of Swindoll's statement. Could this introduction, these beatitudes, could this be a beautiful portrait of a servant? I think so. So here's this point. Yeah, Swindoll was onto something. He was onto a great idea. So we want to see how each statement in the Beatitudes helps paint a portrait of a servant of Jesus Christ. So let's begin with this overview of the Beatitudes. With our Bibles open to Matthew chapter 5, verse 1, we begin reading. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." As we begin, if we were looking for key words or key terms, we immediately have found one. We cannot ignore the word blessed or blessed. It's used, I think, 9 times in 12 verses. So we need a correct understanding of this word if we are to understand the traits, the characteristics that are described in the Beatitudes, as well as the promises associated with each Beatitude. When we see that word, blessed or blessed, in this teaching, we often pause to make sure that everyone knows that the word means to be happy. When we say blessed means happy, let me just give you an example. That is like comparing an old Jeep. I used to have a 1999 Jeep, and it held together, I think, at times with chewing gum. It would be like comparing that old 1999 Jeep with a brand new sports car. Both are vehicles, but they get you from place to place. It's not the same experience. The same holds true when we think of blessed and happy. The word blessed is so much richer than just saying be happy. It's more than that. This is a rich word. BibleHub.com describes blessed as being in the wonderful position of receiving God's provisions, His blessings. Then there's this quote from Word Biblical Commentary that I really like. The author, Donald A. Hagner, writes this in the Word Biblical Commentary on Matthew. The word is, of course, especially appropriate in the New Testament in such contexts as the present one, where it describes the nearly incomprehensible happiness of those who participate in the kingdom announced by Jesus. These blessings, they come from being a follower of Christ. We are the recipients of the goodness of God, the blessings of Christ, the forgiveness that comes through the blood of Jesus Christ. That is blessed. That is what it means to be blessed. So let's just move through each beatitude and kind of whet our appetite, if you will, for what we're in store for the next several weeks. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This phrase, poor in spirit, has quite a history. It points to four different stages, if you will. First of all, it began with just the idea of being poor. But it progressed to mean poor, therefore having no influence or power. In the third stage, it referred to being poor because they have no influence or authority and are therefore downtrodden and oppressed by men. When we come to see, finally, poor in spirit as the one who is humble, the one who puts his whole trust in God. Or as I've heard it described, blessed is the one who recognizes, who sees the need for God in his life. Blessed is the one who sees his condition as being spiritually bankrupt without Jesus. Matthew chapter 5 verse 4 says, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. It's a perfect word to use here to come into my mind, but I have to just admit it's a word that is seldom used in our society, seldom used in the church today, but it just fits. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. The word that comes to my mind is lament. Lament. It conveys the idea of sorrow, an aching of the soul. What do we mourn? Well, we can mourn a lot. We can mourn the sinful condition of the world today. This humility that comes from the first beatitude, it has led us to see our need personally for Jesus Christ. And so we mourn our sin. We lament our sin. This sin that separates us from God, the sin that put Jesus on the cross. So blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. The third beatitude, Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Society often misreads this beatitude. It does not say, blessed are the weak, for they shall be the doormats of society. That's not what it says. In our everybody for themselves world, only the strong survive. We've heard that before, right? That's what they say. Meekness is this beautiful picture of power under control. Meek is not weak, it is power under control. So the same holds true for us. Blessed are those who understand this idea of meekness, of what it means to go through in life, recognizing having power under control. Chapter 5, verse 6 in Matthew, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. A true servant, I like this, a true servant has an insatiable appetite for what is right. We want to know what is right. We want to live what is right. We want to walk the right path. We hunger and thirst for righteousness. It is an insatiable appetite for what is right. We hunger and thirst for righteousness, and God fills it. This portrait of a servant, it's beginning to come together, and we will see that even more in weeks ahead. We move on to the fifth beatitude, chapter 5, verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. I will probably spend a good bit of time in that lesson on this idea of mercy. This is, in my life, it is a beatitude that is really getting a lot of attention in my life right now, of how we should look and treat other people. Charles Swindoll defines mercy as a concern for people in need. It's a ministry to the miserable. And we live in a day when the world is filled with anger, bitterness, this hunger for revenge. We can turn the world upside down when we extend mercy. Not responding in anger, bitterness, and revenge. We respond in love. This concern for people in need. This concern for people who are in a state of misery. This is truly a heart to care for and serve others. Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Again, I will keep saying this. One of my favorite verses in the Bible. One of my favorite Beatitudes. I think I'll probably end up saying that about all of them. This passage, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. It challenges us as followers of Jesus to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. It is a longing for purity, sincerity, and honesty. The heart points to the inner man beyond what everybody else can see. And during Jesus' ministry, he dealt with more than his share of hypocrites. He condemned this attitude of having an inside that is just rotten to the core while trying to put up this facade on the outside. Jesus said, whatever comes out of our mouth is a reflection of the heart. So it's what's on the inside. It really does. It determines of doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. So we will look at that. Again, another study I'm looking forward to in a great way. Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. The call for peacemakers, I believe, may be our greatest need in the world today. Don't misunderstand the teaching here either. It doesn't mean blessed are those who avoid conflict at all cost. It does not mean blessed are those who work for peace at any price. A peacemaker is a person, first of all, is at peace with himself or herself. From there, we work to settle arguments, not to start them. A peacemaker is not ill-tempered or argumentative. The final beatitude, chapter 5, verses 10 through 12. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. People who desire to serve the Lord and others will often find themselves on the, I think the easiest way to put it is find ourselves on the short end of the stick. But we don't let that get us down. Our goal is to continue to reflect Christ in all we do. Our faith remains strong. Our resolve remains strong. Can you tell why I'm excited to begin this study? Can you see why I'm excited to begin even this portion of our study? Now, we've got the whole Sermon on the Mount ahead of us, but right now we're going to focus on the Beatitudes. So going back to something that Charles Swindoll said, can a servant like this, if this is indeed the portrait of a servant, and I believe it is, if that's the case, can a servant like this influence a world that is selfish, competitive, and angry? The answer is yes. Don't give in. Don't give up. Don't lose heart. Let's begin this exciting journey together. The Sermon on the Mount. So we begin at the Beatitudes. Next week, we'll look at that first beatitude. We will dig deeply and unpack that idea. Blessed are the poor in spirit. I hope you'll join us for that study, Lord willing, next Sunday evening on our evening online worship at Mall Road Church of Christ.